You know I'm right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in entertainment, sports, media, comedy, and entrepreneurship. So much more as well. Nick Durst here, along with Joe Calabrese and Joe. We are getting ready to do an interesting episode here. A guy who checks off two of the boxes that I mentioned in the intro. And it's been a while, but once again, we have a Brit back on the program with us.
Yes, somebody from across the pond. We'll have a good time with him coming up. Tennis player, coach, but really over the past couple of years, he's blown up and he does some comedy, and you may see him on Instagram or TikTok recording videos. So he was referred to us. We're very, very happy to have him on. We're going to have a lot of fun. And we welcome Greg Johnstone to the show. Greg, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for checking us out before you came on with us. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, boys. Happy to be here. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me here today.
Well, we are very excited to speak with you here. I know you get up early in the morning, around 4:30. So what's the first app you're checking out on your phone when you get up in the morning?
Oof. You know what? I guess it really sort of depends on what was happening the night before, based on what is going on in the world of news, the world of politics. I'm like straight into the news, man. I'm straight into the news websites, whether
Nice.
it's CNN. Oh yeah, first thing in the morning, I need to know what happened through the night, what I missed.
What
Um,
time do you go to bed? Do you wake up at 4:30 in the morning?
if I see 9:30 p.m., something went wrong. Something went wrong in my
Wow.
evening there. So I'm normally asleep by half nine. Alarm goes off at half four, and fired up, ready to go in the morning.
Very nice. Now, how does your routine work? Like when's the last time you're reading? Is it like 4:30, 5 o'clock, or is it even earlier than that?
So, so you said reading what when I'm up and like reading the websites. That's what the question was. Yeah. So I'm on my phone. I just saw, I just went through this the other day with a couple of my staff actually. My screen time on my phone is about 12 hours a day. So I am staring at my phone
I have like five
so
hours, and I
much.
think that's a lot.
Yeah, so mine was like 11:47. So I am glued to my phone from literally almost from the moment I get up, when I'm doing my job throughout the day, constantly checking it, constantly checking breaking news stories all day. So I'm looking at my phone pretty much from the moment I wake up in the morning. I maybe 5 minutes before I'm out for the night, and then that's it. I'm on it all day.
So to follow up from what I was saying before, so I was asking you about like when your last meal of the day is usually. Is it
Oh,
like around
okay,
five or
excuse me.
so?
Oh,
But in
so
terms of
sorry.
but in
So
terms of like how do you like what time do you eat breakfast? Like what does your routine look like? Because you're a relatively in shape guy, so I'm just curious.
So I get up, I do, I mean, I'm a caffeine nutcase. It's really bad. So I'm up, I'm doing espressos first thing in the morning, and then I do a protein bar and a protein shake as I'm driving to work for 5:30. Then I normally get to eat an omelet 7 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Find some time for lunch. My last meal of the day is probably 7 p.m. again.
Okay.
Um, but with how packed my day is, like I'm one of those guys that just you just find time to eat and figure it out.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of how busy I am. So like I don't. Unfortunately, I wish I could. I wish I had set meals and a better schedule and could tell you there's some magic into how to do it. But it's
Yeah.
often just
Well, Joey's
wing
on
it.
that. He's on that Project Rock lifestyle.
No, I again, you're very very in shape. It seems like you're constantly moving, so that probably contributes to it.
Yeah, and I don't feel right if I miss a day in the gym as well. So I always make time for that, more for what's going on between my ears than anything else. Obviously, the result is you end up in half decent shape for a guy that just turned 40. But um, yeah, it's a lot of, I think growing up playing tennis and being in all that, you learn what's the right stuff to put in your body. So my diet's pretty good. I have a pretty good understanding of caloric intake, making sure that I'm never putting in too much if I haven't put out enough. So keep it pretty simple.
Very, very good. You mentioned that you turned 40 this year. So this is a question that's usually reserved for a little bit later on in the podcast. But between Nick and I tend to be the one who's kind of into astrology and all that. So based on the research that we did, it seems like your birthday is in late February. That would make you a Pisces, right? Is that
That
correct?
is correct.
That is
Yes.
correct. Do you let that, well, we'll make it broader, right? Do you let that kind of stuff, like the astrology stuff, or are you like into spiritual stuff? Are you into, mind and wellness and all that? Like, do you meditate at all? Do these concepts ever, come up in your life or apply to your life, day to day?
So I wouldn't say I necessarily believe in any of the astrological stuff. The only thing I've noticed that's a common thread through Pisces is that we cry a lot, whether it's movies, whether it's music, like we're big criers, and I'm definitely one of those. So there could
I
be some truth to that.
I'm a Cancer, so I'm a fellow water sign. So what you learn as you get older is that the phases of the moon matter, right? So I will say, to your point that you kind of feel like you cry a lot, I tend to be moody. Sometimes I want to be reserved. Sometimes I just want to get away from everybody, right? So, again, it applies for some people. Nick is a Gemini, right? So when it comes to starting the podcast and being a gifted communicator and all that kind of stuff, you could see elements of that in his personality. But again, not everybody's going to resonate with this. So I was just curious to see what your answer was going to be.
Yeah, so not so much from the astrological side, but from a working on mental health and doing all that stuff. I tell you what, over the last probably 5 years, that has been primary goal number one for everything I'm doing in my life. I sort of, it was actually my wife that said it to me was, if you are the best version of yourself, you can be the best version of you for everybody else. So me sort of making sure that, putting a lot of emphasis on being happy, being really well. I actually just quit drinking a little bit over a year ago. So I just have done a year sober and, all that sort of stuff really helps, but so to answer your question, yes, I do put a lot of thought into that stuff. Do I believe in stars and moon phases and all that, and it's affecting me? I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough to say no, but it's not something I'm out there sort of saying like, "Oh, got to do this because Mercury's in retrograde or whatever the standard thing is."
That's what Joe is always saying. I don't know what he's talking about. But let's talk about something that is, deep within you, a ritual. As you sip your mug right there, tea time. Is it overrated, properly rated, or underrated?
Tea tea time. Well, so tea time in England actually is means dinner time. So
Really?
we call yeah. So if you're getting ready for tea time is dinner really.
Mm.
Um, Tea as a drink itself is the single most overrated thing out of any British export ever.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice.
Could
You
have
sit
avoided that
there
Boston
and
Tea Party back in the day.
yeah,
Greg was
yeah,
drinking.
right. I'm actually still not over that. That's why I resent that a little bit. Um, but no, I mean, tea is just, boiled leaves, man. I mean, it's all right. It's something nice to sip on. As I mentioned before, I'm chugging caffeine and espressos. That's what I'm drinking right now, another coffee. So if you give me the option to have a tea or a coffee, I'm drinking coffee
Yeah,
all day, every day.
Joe's pounding the coffees and the energy drinks all day. Me, I'm
Yeah.
I'm all natural.
Yeah, and be careful with those energy drinks, man.
I
I was
know.
a 3 or 4 sugar-free Red Bulls a day guy, and just read an article not too long ago about just how bad they are for you. So tried to wean myself off those things. Not that I, want to throw Red Bull under the bus, but all of them can be pretty bad for you.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing through the years. Everybody has a vice. I've been drinking those drinks for a really, really long time, and my mom doesn't love it. But again, that's a habit that eventually I will have to break. I will take
Nah,
your.
I mean you don't have to.
Well,
You don't have to. You still
well, I
drinking.
mean, you drink one every day. Nick, do I drink one like literally every day? Yeah.
I think you drink more than one a day.
Well, I drink, usually I'll drink a Monster. If I don't drink a Monster, I'll drink a coffee, but like I definitely have a coffee in my hand every day. The only reason I
Are
don't
you
have
going?
it hit.
Are you going sugar free with the energy drinks?
now.
Oh, that's okay. That's so there's a
Yeah.
lot in those in the full fat ones. That could be tough.
Yeah, I know. This is something we got to talk about, once the show is over and we get the opportunity to connect more. We talk about bad advice. Let's talk about good stuff. Let's talk about your background in tennis. When did you start playing tennis? Because most people that I know who picked it up and who are relatively good at it, but not really, professional or anything like that, usually it's their parents who are kind of putting a racket in their hand when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. So is that what it was for you? Or did you just kind of pick it up, at some point a little bit older?
So I was actually being babysat by my next door neighbor. I think I was 6 years old, and they took their son to a tennis lesson that I tagged along with. Um, you know, I was raised by a single mother, so she, well, wasn't taking me to these things or anything like that. And I went along to this tennis lesson, and they were like, "Oh, do you want to jump in?" And apparently, I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll give it a go." And that evening, they called my mother and were like, "You have a really talented tennis player on your hands here. He needs to play. This needs to be something that he gets more of a go at." And that was it, really. I can't remember after the age of about 10 really wanting to do anything else as a kid. Like I was on that working as hard as I could to try and become a pro. Obviously didn't end up making it, but had a good Division 1 college career and had some nice wins, competed against Andy Murray and things like that when I was young. So I was all right. But yeah, started at 6 and then really didn't have another passion until got a little bit older and realized that I also wanted to make people laugh. Um, but to try and become professional at a sport, it's all encompassing. It takes absolutely everything. So from doing that as a kid to then doing it in college, I didn't really have time to think or a desire to do anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, and you had a good run, obviously. You ended up coming to America, Morehead State in Kentucky. So talk to us about the culture shock of moving to America, specifically Kentucky. What's it like being a D1 athlete? And hey, listen, you were pretty good because you were recognized part of Ohio Valley Conference's 75th anniversary men's tennis team. So you had a pretty decent career as well there in college.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. So at 18, obviously you move over to the States because, so this was now, we're talking 2003. So this was now every good tennis player comes to college. Back, in my day, it was, are you going to go to college or are you going to go pro? Right?
Right.
Like those were the two choices. And I made the right choice. I wasn't good enough. So coming to Division 1 college and coming from the economic background that I had, I needed to find somewhere for a full scholarship. And Morehead State was the best Division 1 school that could offer me a full scholarship. I was in communication with some of the top, much bigger schools, but we were talking to Virginia, who offered me sort of like a 25%, and then I have to tell my mum that she has to come up with 75,000 a year when she makes like 20. So going to a school like that without a full scholarship wasn't an option. But Morehead State, I was at for the first 2 years of college, and you want to talk about a culture shock coming from just outside of North London, so a suburb of London, and then going to Morehead, Eastern Kentucky. I honestly, I had only seen places like that in the movies. It was such a small town, nothing for miles, not as small as some of the towns I later find out where they've only got a stop sign. It was a college town and, still a 10,000 student university. Um, but there was a lot of stuff going on in Morehead that I had never seen before. Um, Eastern Kentucky traditions, people drinking moonshine around bonfires. I'm like, hang on a sec. I've just come from a pub. What are we doing drinking it out of the back of somebody's truck? But the good thing was my entire team was foreign. So
Mm.
Australian guys, Canadian guys, some other Europeans, South Americans. So we all were there sort of figuring out Eastern Kentucky
Uh,
together.
all the Commonwealth
Um,
guys hanging out in Kentucky.
that's it. That's it. Well, you know what? It was one of those mid-major schools that you couldn't really get good Americans to go to because all the Americans went to the better schools. So a solid mid-major tennis program like that was all of them were full of foreign guys. but I had a good run. I got Conference Player of the Year as a sophomore. Was nationally ranked pretty high. That's how I ended up in that Ohio Valley Conference. All 75-year team, which was sort of a nice acknowledgement. And then then transferred over to the University of Kentucky, who were 14 in the country at the time. Um, and that was when I sort of figured out that there was a lot of really, really good tennis players out there, and I wasn't going to make it, so I needed to start making some other adjustments. But I was a decent tennis player. Nothing to write home about, but ranked Division 1 college player. That's not so bad.
Anytime you could play a collegiate sport and not pay to go to school, I think you did a mission accomplished. So,
That's right.
United States, I guess you kind of loved it. You didn't leave after that. So, talk to us your decision to ultimately live in America and how that coupled in with you deciding to become a tennis coach and creating your own tennis academy to develop players.
So I graduated college in '08. And don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but that's when the world exploded. Economically, all the stuff with the banks, the world just fell apart. And I actually had moved back to England for a year. That was when I first wanted to get into entertainment. So I was hoping to get into comedy, thought I had a couple of things lined up after college. The world goes arse up, and
Yep, of course.
I was literally applying for jobs that with thousands of other applicants. There was no jobs to get, entry level jobs. Even with a degree, I was not getting a look at anything. So that there was a few months in England. I mean, I worked as a parking lot attendant, just telling cars where to go, security guy for one place in an evening, just helping people move. There was no jobs available. And about 6 months into being at home, got a phone call from one of my friends who was up here in New York, and was like, listen, we know tennis coaching is not what you want to do, but it's a pretty good entry level salary. If you want to do it for a couple of years, you'll be in New York, move on back. And moved back to New York about 8 months after I graduated. So now I think we're in sort of, June, maybe May of that following year. And I would say within 6 months, I fell in love with coaching like you wouldn't believe, especially helping young athletes trying to become collegiate players. And very, very quickly ended up sort of with my own academy program. Um, then moved over to a country club where I had a really great job and my academy at the same time. And things just sort of for about 10 years just blew up. I mean, I had a program where it was almost every year 4 or 5 kids were going off to play college tennis. I mean, I really had a top academy program there for a while, and just sort of fell in love with that idea of doing something I was good at, which was tennis, helping young people achieve their goals, which I enjoyed. And I felt growing up, my coaches were the most important people in my life, so I could then be that to these young people. Um, and then that took us almost up to the pandemic. And just really from that span from '09 to 2020, just couldn't have loved anything more than I was loving coaching. Um, and that was then, the pandemic started. My academy essentially, it got taken away from the club it was at. They wanted to go in a different direction, and that's when we pivoted and became the internet funny man.
All right. Figuring out a way to give back to the sport is excellent. We're gonna get to the funny man stuff in just a bit. Want to talk about being the director of racket sports at the new Canaan Racket Club in Connecticut, right? So
That's
when
where
did
I'm at.
that
That's where I'm at
happen?
now. Yeah.
That's where you're at now. So when did that start?
So after doing the country club thing for a little while, I moved then back into the private, like this is like the public club. So it's a very, very nice indoor club in New Canaan, Connecticut. And it was really just a good fit for me to, continue doing what I enjoy, which is coaching. But also, at the country clubs, if you're a director, they don't want the director of tennis at a country club also doing political satire on the internet. They want that person. This is your job. This is your main job. We want your focus. So this is look, it's a wonderful job. I love the club I'm at. I love the people. But because it's just a public club, they don't mind if you have a side gig. They don't mind if you go off and do what I do in the afternoons and evenings, which is, as I try and make people laugh on the internet. So we've got it's a really great club to be a part of. I shifted from Westchester to Fairfield County, Connecticut for it. I actually couldn't speak any higher of the club itself and the community around, which I don't think you can find too many people that can speak really highly of their job, but I do. I'm very fortunate. Um, yeah, and sort of that's where I'm at now, and that's I guess 50% of what I do at this point. That one full-time job. Um, but it's great. I enjoy work. I coach a lot of adults now as well as kids and stuff like that. So it's a really nice fit for a guy that's getting a little older as well.
So Greg, my
And
son, he's going to be 2 in August. When should I give him a racket to get him acclimated and get him on the court?
You know what? I get this question all the time. So I have a 3-year-old son as well. Um, the best thing you can do, in my professional opinion, is have him do everything.
Yep.
Have him hold a racket for a while, hit a ball around on the floor, then have him kick a soccer ball, then have him throw a ball, then have him dance, jump around, get on a trampoline. At some point, he'll find his own way. He'll start driving the bus. He'll be like, Daddy, I want to do this more. I want to do this. And as long as I would really say, it's dangerous, right? Because there's more and more specialization now,
Yeah.
younger. And I, there's never been a 10-year-old get recruited to college. There's never been an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old go pro. So I think it's just super important just to develop athleticism, make sure he loves it.
Yeah.
The best lesson I think from a parenting standpoint that I learned, kids learn really quickly that they want to please their parents in that regard. Like, I want to win because look at daddy's smile when I win. And
Hmm.
even if you don't say anything negative when he loses, but they can see it in your face. If you just say to the kid, I just enjoy watching you play. Seeing you play just brings me so much joy. They'll love it. They'll love competing. And when kids, they tend to love things they start getting good at. So, your kid will find his passion. And if it's tennis, wonderful. If it's soccer, for all my kid wants to do at the moment is dance and tell jokes. So, maybe I've got a theater baby on my hands, who knows? But as long as they're happy, yeah, who cares?
as long as they're happy and healthy, Nick's son, he's quite the entertainer. You can kind of see it with the way he looks sometimes, especially when he posts stuff on social media. So, you want to be the funny man. We'll get to talk about your comedy stuff, right? Because now it seems like everybody these days, you got a phone, you got a camera, right? You can record content on demand. But talk about specifically what you originally wanted to do, and you kind of like doing sketch stuff, right? So that makes a lot of sense. What did you start talking about specifically? What kind of content were you putting out there, and how exactly did you start gaining traction and grow your following significantly on both Instagram and TikTok?
So pandemic hadn't started yet. Um, it was late 2019, and I was always into doing sort of short sketches, like, and when I say short, I mean 10 to 12 seconds, and just posting them on my own Instagram. Back then, stuff wasn't really getting pushed out the same way it is now. Like the Reels page wasn't a thing. And so I was just doing stuff almost just to, make myself laugh. And then I started just doing some other stuff with some voices. I had a couple people just say, this stuff's actually quite funny. And given that I was, full-time tennis coach from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, I didn't really take it too seriously. Then the pivot happened where the club I was at, as I said, they didn't want my academy to be at this private club anymore. So I just so happened to come across Gary Vaynerchuk, and his content. He was saying, if you enjoy making videos, if you enjoy putting content out, this app TikTok is the one you've got to use. And I remember thinking back to when Instagram first came out, and I was like, I don't need an Instagram. I've got Facebook. And then Instagram blew up, and I was like, man, I really dropped the ball there. I'm not going to do it again. And at the time, I was literally doing these videos making fun of my wife. I did an entire series of videos called This Is What It's Like Being Married to Farah. And it was all of the sort of little idiosyncrasies that happen in a marriage. And they were just very short, 12 to 15 seconds long. And it was things like, I remember the first one was, here is the tray we have to put keys in. It's always empty, right? And married people can relate to that, like the keys are going to be in her bag. Then there was one where we have a parking space outside our house and a one-car garage. Um, the garage is empty, she's parked outside. And so, it picked up. So I'd done maybe 8 or 9 of these on Instagram just to make my friends laugh. See this thing from Gary Vaynerchuk, hey, post it on Instagram. So I post these 9 videos on Instagram on TikTok on a Friday. Didn't think anything of it. Go back and have a look at TikTok on a Monday. One of the videos had over 100,000 views. Most of them were somewhere between sort of 4 and 10,000 views, and I had like 3,500 followers out of nowhere. And I was like, hang on a second, this might be something. So I did for the next 2 months, every day. I think I ended up doing like 55 episodes of
Wow.
This Is What It's Like Being Married to Farah, and I'm making fun of my wife. So had to make sure she was good with it, had to make sure it wasn't going to destroy the marriage, and literally just kept pumping out every day a video. And then one of them got 1 million views. And I was like, this doesn't feel normal. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm just getting lucky. Like, it feels like I might have something here. And that was when I then started pivoting towards doing sketch comedy. So did that sort of 12 to 20-second sketch comedy length. And I think I'd been on TikTok about 2.5 months when one of my videos got 40 million views in 2 days.
Whew.
And that was the beginning of where I was like, oh, wow, I've really got something here. That video got me, 300,000 followers in those 2 days. And I went from a guy that had like 75,000 followers, which I built up over the first 2.5 months, to almost 400,000. And now you're like, okay, this might actually really, really be something. But I was also still the director at a country club at this point. And I was like, oh man, I've got to, how do I balance these two things? So I really then kept Instagram separate. Instagram was sort of personal, not posting on the Instagram, and just exclusively banged out TikTok content. And sort of just grew, evolved, tried to figure out what the algorithm likes, how do you get views, and found an outlet for the comedy and entertainment that I'd always wanted to do, and just sort of ended up being a tennis coach, loving being a tennis coach, but always wanted to be that guy that was doing the comedy and had dabbled with it, but never really took it seriously. And once I realized that maybe there was something there, I just made sure I kept making videos every day, some hits, some misses, and, just kept growing until I took the job at New Canaan Racquet Club, when that was now 3 years ago, where I started posting on Instagram as well. And here we are with 400 and something thousand Instagram followers and 2.8 million on TikTok.
So how did it feel to go from the tennis courts to social media sensation? And what was the reaction from your family? You have a brother, you have a sister, your wife, your friends. What was their reaction? And when did the first time it occur that someone at the tennis court put it together and was like, "Oh, you're on TikTok too."
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, a really interesting mix. Nobody ever said anything that I feel was coming from a bad place, but I had a really interesting mix of, hey man, you're doing really well in this tennis coaching world. Don't mess it up by trying to be an idiot on the internet. Like, this is not a good look for a director. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. And in my heart, I was just like, man, but it just feels like this is something. Family, my brother, my sister, they, we're all a theatrical family, musical theatre. They're good singers, stuff like that. Growing up, my sister's been on TV a little bit in the UK. Is a radio show host back there as well. And she was, obviously full supportive. Like, this is what you're good at. This is your passion. Go for it. The first time, I ever really noticed that there was a crossover is I gave a British guy at the new Canaan Racquet Club. It was like his first day. Here's a lesson, and he walked in and he looks at me sort of strangely, and he just points at me and goes, "TikTok." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you've seen my stuff," and obviously had a really positive reaction. Oh yeah, no, really funny, blah blah blah. So. Um, growing it and combining the two, it was more just sort of going with my gut and really saying, you know what, I don't think these two things should interfere with themselves. They are very, very separate, teaching people tennis and doing political now, no, political satire on the internet, comedy on the internet. And, some people, especially early on, were like, dude, this is a kids app. Like, what are you doing on a children's app making a fool out of yourself? And yeah, I said, I just went with my gut and it felt right. And, now here I am making a half decent living at both.
So have you done any comedy on a stage, in a live setting? And is that something you'd want to do? And also, what do you think the biggest differences are between doing comedy for social media, like 15, 25 seconds, versus having to do a full 20 plus minute set on stage?
So I've done a lot of private shows. I get booked for, private parties and stuff like that. So audiences of, 40 to 50. I actually have a show coming up in July in the city that's, place holds about 350 on July 10th. So I can, try and tag that in this video somewhere to get more people to buy tickets. Um, and you know what? I really enjoy both. The one thing about doing stand up to a live audience is that immediate reaction to, is it connecting or not? On the internet, you put out there, my numbers now say if a video gets, let's say, 250,000 views, it didn't really catch. If a video gets multiple million views, okay, I really hit onto something there. And if a video doesn't catch, I just move on. I'll do it the next day. The one thing that I enjoy and struggle with a little bit about the live stuff is, I have a lot of respect for the craft. I haven't done it enough to be so good at it like some of these people you see on TV or everything. So I appreciate how much work goes into it. But I do practice a lot, and a lot of the jokes have been in my head for years. And so when one doesn't hit, I'm like, man, how did you blow that? Like, everyone's normally good enough where you get a couple of like after dinner laughs type things. It's never dead silence. But that's kind of the biggest difference is just on the videos online. Once I've posted it, it's not mine anymore. It's just videos in people's hands. When you're live, and when it's hitting, it's the best feeling in the world. When it's not quite hitting, it's like, oh man, okay, let's pivot off this, let's move on, and let's get on to something else. But more of the live stuff, if my life would allow, I would love to do it. It's just tough to do a couple comedy clubs till 2 o'clock in the morning, drive back to Westchester from Manhattan, and then have an alarm go off at 4:30 and think you're going to function for a day.
Yeah, it'll be tough, but you can make it work. It seems like your wife is very supportive of you in both your careers, and that's the key.
Yeah, and 2 hours of sleep and enough caffeine, should be all right for a couple days.
Now
Yeah,
we know why he drinks so much caffeine.
Never ends, pal. Never ends. Yeah, and then with a 3-year-old running around, dude, yeah, brutal, non-stop.
always on the go. So, Greg, in your life or your career, what would you say has been your I'm right moment? What I mean by that, it's a time or place where you wanted to pursue something. You asked somebody for advice. They said, Greg, don't do that. That's a bad idea. It's not going to work out for you. And you said to them, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pursue this anyway. I'm going to go do it. And in the end, you will see why it is that I'm right about this. And I can tell you, I told you so.
You know what? I won't say his name, but there was I was one of my former students. His dad, British guy, I was very close with, really nice guy. And this was back in 2019 when, I had to make that decision. Am I just going to jump straight back into, just moving my academy to a different club, maybe start it over again, or am I going to really pursue this comedy dream that I have? And I was having the chat with him, and I sort of alluded to him a little bit earlier, but he was one of the people that I respected a ton. And he basically said, "Yeah, you're funny, but you are an exceptional tennis coach. Stick to tennis. Stick to what you know." And there was just something in my heart where I was like, making people laugh means more to me than anything. That's my real passion, entertaining people, and I want to be in front of people. And I think, and I was like, I think I can do it. And just in my like, there was just something that said, when you do things that they always seem to catch, they always seem to work. Just give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, so what? That would be the moment where I said, you know what, and he meant it in a nice way. You're an exceptional tennis coach. Just stick to what you're really good at. And something in me just went, you know what though, but I think I'm going to be able to make people laugh too. And so thank God I didn't listen to him, because without this creative outlet, who knows what I would have done. I could have been really miserable teaching tennis. So that was that moment where I said, you know what, I'm gonna trust my gut. This is my move right here. And whether it's luck, judgment, or a little bit of effort and talent, it worked out.
Well, obviously, it takes a nice mix of everything that you just described. I think the fire in your belly, right, to do comedy. We think that you're great, and big shout out to your wife. But everybody says happy wife, happy life. I see that with Nick every single day. His wife is amazing, huge supporter of the show. In terms of your wife, Greg, the ability to be able to roll with the punches, that's not something that, all women kind of want to be a part of, but she was very, very happy to do that for you and help start that secondary career. And now you get to marry basically everything. You get to marry the nice personal family life. You get to marry the opportunity to make people laugh and entertain them and kind of be heartwarming, and then to help aspiring kids and students along the way in their tennis career. So what we think you have going on is tremendous. Keep going. Hopefully we'll be able to collaborate soon. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in person. Hopefully soon. But Greg, this has been a lot of fun. We thank you for your time. We appreciate your time. And what we do here is we always give our guests the last word. So if there's anything else personal you would like to share or promote for yourself, by all means, go ahead. Once again, we thank you for doing this. We wish you the best of luck moving forward. And where can all of our viewers and listeners find you on social media?
Oh yeah, so I'm Instagram and TikTok at johnstone.gregory. Go and find me over there. Hopefully you have a laugh. And just, based on the way this conversation went, if I can offer any advice to absolutely anybody about anything and sort of how I've ended up having any level of success in anything I've done, just outwork everybody. And whatever you're going to do, whether it's comedy, whether it's coaching, whether it's trying to be good at sports, whatever it is, just be the hardest worker in the room, outwork everybody always. And if you do that, good things tend to happen.
Very well said. Great last words. Greg, thank you for your time. That's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Greg Johnstone, for my co-host, Joseph Calabrese, I am Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.